بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. And we've got around 25 slides or so to cover, so it'll be around 30 minutes inshallah. We're trying not to keep it any longer than that. Now to begin, inshallah, let's go over the virtues of what's known as ma'rifah. Ma'rifah is knowledge of Allah. And as we know, the highest form of knowledge is the knowledge of Allah Himself, that which describes Allah, His names and His attributes. For example, we go to a hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was reported that Ubay ibn Ka'b, he said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya Al-Malik, do you know which verse of Allah in the book of Allah is the greatest verse? And so then after he responded saying, Ayatul Kursi, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he struck him on the chest and he said, by Allah, Ya Abul Mundhir, rejoice in this knowledge. So Ayatul Kursi is the greatest ayah in the Quran. And that's all about Allah, describing who Allah is. And likewise also we find that with Surah Ikhlas. Surah Ikhlas is equivalent to 1/3 of the Quran. Again, what is Surah Ikhlas? It is all about Allah, describing who Allah is. Ibn Jawzi, rahimahullah, he said that by Allah, if an intelligent believer had to recite Surah Hadid and the end of Surah Hashr, I'm sure we all know who Allahu alladhi la ilaha illahu alimul ghaybi wa shahada huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim up until the end. And likewise also with Surah Ikhlas. And also Ayatul Kursi. And he had to do deep tadabbur. He had to contemplate deeply over these surahs, over these ayat, and think about Allah and the greatness of Allah. His heart would burst open. His heart would burst open out of the awe, the khashiyah of Allah. And he would be mind blown over Allah's greatness. And so it's our duty that every single time we recite the Quran, especially in today's day and age, if you ask the average Muslim, how much do they know of Allah? Many of us, we are ignorant of His names. We'll know that He has 99 names, and perhaps we can even say those names. Maybe some of us, we've memorized those names. But can we explain those names? How it affects you in your life? How to make dua with those names? As Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he said that there's 3 stages, you could say, or 3 levels when it comes to understanding or living by the names of Allah. The first is to just memorize the names itself. That's just the first level. The second level is to ponder over the names of Allah and try to understand how it affects your life and how it affects the entire creation around you. And the highest level is knowing how to make dua to Allah using those names. So for each and every single situation you may be in, for every need that you may have, using the appropriate name of Allah for that situation. For example, if you are in need of forgiveness, maybe you fell into a sin, then you would use the names of Allah, Al-Ghafur Ar-Rahim perhaps, or Al-Ghaffar perhaps, the forgiver or the most forgiving. Or perhaps you are in poverty and you need Allah to enrich you, then you will call upon Al-Ghani. It's a powerful dua. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he taught us, Allahumma kfini bihalalika an haramik, waghnini bifadlika amman siwak. Oh Allah, suffice me with your halal against your haram. Waghnini bifadlik, and enrich me with your bounty. Again, this goes back to Allah's name, Al-Ghani. Perhaps you need rizq, so you call upon Ar-Razzaq. And likewise, if you need guidance, you'll call upon Al-Hadi to guide you. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. And so, not truly knowing Allah on an intimate basis, it's a calamity for the Muslim to have been born. Let's say majority of Muslims, they are born into a Muslim family and they grew up as Muslims. They said, La ilaha illallah. But they didn't truly understand why they said that. Because they didn't truly know Allah on an intimate basis. And the heart of the believer, or the heart of the Muslim, you cannot know Allah. Or the heart of the human being cannot know Allah unless he studies the names and the attributes of Allah. So let us all realize the favor of Allah as we gather at this blessed time after Fajr, sitting over here, learning about Allah, yearning to get closer to Allah, so that our hearts may feel the presence of Allah, so that your heart can bask in His presence and His rahmah. May Allah grant us all closeness to Him. And so we've been studying the names of Allah, Al-Malik, Al-Malik, and Al-Malik. And now we are on our 5th week. We are near the end. We just got this week and next week, inshallah. This week we're going to go over some of the ahadith regarding the name of Allah, Al-Malik. And next week we'll go over some of the du'as that we can use or we can call upon Allah with using these names. But the first question we have to ask ourselves, and this is a question that we have to ask ourselves constantly, as much as you can, daily, weekly also, is that who is Allah? Who is it exactly that you are dealing with? The moment you raise your hands and you say, Ya Rabb, who exactly are you calling upon? Does your heart realize it? That He is Allah, Al-Malik, the King. As we've been over in the past, and this is just a quick recap, just for us to recall what we studied. The one who in His dhatiyya, in His essence, He is kingly, He is majestic, He is awe-inspiring. Thinking about Al-Malik, the King, automatically humbled your heart. Thinking about Allah as Al-Malik should automatically bring humility into our hearts. That He is the Almighty King, the one who controls every single affair of His creation. To realize that your entire existence is all in the hands of Allah alone. He controls everything that happens in your life. That's when you realize who Al-Malik is, the King. Again, it brings into your heart the utmost level of fear and hope, of raghba and rahba. Because Allah, He says in the Quran, if we travel to Surah Yunus, قُلْ لَا أَمْلِكُ لِنَفْسِي ضَرًّا وَلَا نَفَعًا إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ. Say, O Prophet, لَا أَمْلِكُ لِنَفْسِي, I do not possess any power for myself, ضَرًّا وَلَا نَفَعًا, to harm myself or to benefit myself, إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ, except what Allah wills for me. So all benefit is in Allah's hands. He's the only one who could benefit you. All harm is in Allah's hands alone. He's the only one who could harm you. So the slave realizes he's been calling upon Allah for the past 10 years. Ya Rabb, I'm still in poverty. I'm still in debt. Ya Rabb, clear my debt. Ya Rabb, grant me rizq. And it's still not coming to you. The simple truth is because Al-Malik has said, no, not yet. No, not yet. Maybe you've been suffering with an illness for a certain period of your life, and you have been calling upon Allah, and you've been waking up for tahajjud, and you do tawassul using His greatest names that you've been taught, and still the cure hasn't come yet. The simple answer is because Al-Malik has not given permission yet. You wanted to get married, but it hasn't happened yet. You need to realize it's because Al-Malik alone has not given permission. And when Al-Malik gives his permission, that is when anything of benefit can come to you. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. Likewise also, Al-Malik, the King, the exclusive and primary owner of all things. The exclusive owner, the absolute owner, where everything goes back to Him, and He's the primary owner of everything that you may have. So you are the secondary owner of everything that you possess. Be it your bodies, be it the material items that we have around us, our clothing, be it your tawfiq, be it even your tawfiq. As is mentioned, Imam Qurtubi, he mentioned in his book At-Tadhkirah, that imagine a slave. He goes to the masjid and he offers salah. And then after he shows off, the religious arrogance enters his heart. I'm righteous, I'm worshipping my Lord. And how foolish would that be? Because that salah that you offered, it was rented to you. It belongs to Allah. It's like a person going and renting a Lamborghini for 2 hours and then driving around saying, oh, look at my car, look at my car. But your ibadah, it was written for you already. So again, realizing that Al-Malik owns this and controls this. Even when we do fulfill our duties to Allah, we remain humble, knowing that it's only by Allah's permission we were here in the masjid today. It is only by Allah's permission that we believe in Him in the first place. May Allah grant us all the husnul khatimah and to die as Muslimin. Likewise, Al-Malik, the king, the one who is the most dominant in the minds of his believing slaves. So much so that when the believer, when you realize who Al-Malik is in your life, you cannot help but think about Allah. You love to think about Allah. Dhikrullah, you love to remember Him. And if a period of time goes by when you haven't thought about Allah, you haven't remembered Allah, then you cannot live with yourself until you start doing so again. You feel empty inside. You feel down and depressed. That how could I go for 1 hour without doing dhikrullah? Because when the believer realizes who Al-Malik is, the one who is most dominant in their minds, they love to think about Him. Likewise, Al-Malik, the one who is most dominant in the hearts of His believing slaves, the one who possesses the hearts of His believing slaves, so much so that all of their feelings, it becomes for Him alone. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. The true believers, and may Allah make us of them, their love for Allah is severe because they know who He is. They understand Allah's relationship with them because they look into the names of Allah. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. So much so, Malaka alayhi lub, as we've been over from the past. Then when the true king of your heart, he takes over the very lub, the essence of your heartbeat, where everything you start to do is for Allah alone. Because now you love Him so much, all you can think about is, I need to make my Rabb happy with me. And so every action, ikhlas, it becomes for the pleasure of Allah. Again, may Allah grant us all His pleasure. That's your Lord, Allah. Likewise also Al-Malik we went over, which is usually translated as the owner or the master. The perfect master, you could say, the one with perfect mastery and capability over his self and his actions, having complete control over all things and over all attributes. As we've been over, again, just to recall quickly, Al-Malik, the king, is reference to absolute ownership. It is in the general form. Whereas Al-Malik is reference to specific ownership, which is why usually we'll find something coming after Malik. For example, Malikul Mulk, the master of dominion, or Maliki Yawmiddin, the master or the owner of the day of judgment. And so that's just the difference between Al-Malik and Al-Malik. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. Allah, He says in some powerful ayat, let's go over it in Surah Ghafir. رفيع الدرجات ذو العرش يلقي الروح من أمره على من يشاء من عباده لينذر يوم التلاق. Again, ask yourself the question, who exactly are you dealing with? The moment you say Allahu Akbar, before you even let your mind drift away, ask yourself, who am I standing in front of? Rafi'ud darajat, the possessor of the loftiest rank, the highest. He's lofty in his essence, lofty and sublime in his actions. Dhul Arsh, the possessor of the throne. That's who we are calling upon. Yulqi ruha min amrihi ala man yasha'u min ibadihi. And He gives His inspiration, the wahi, or His command, upon whom He wants of His slaves, liyunzira, to warn you, O Muslim, to warn me, yawm at-talaq, of the day you are going to meet the King Himself, the day you are going to stand before Allah Himself, the day you are going to stand before Al-Malik Himself. You lived your entire life doing everything for Allah. You thought about Allah. You realized and recognized who your true king is. And now you'd be meeting Him. Allah, He continues to say, يَوْمَ هُمْ بَارِزُونَ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَى اللَّهِ مِنْهُمْ شَيْءٌ لِمَنِ الْمُلْكُ الْيَوْمَ لِلَّهِ الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ. يَوْمَ هُمْ بَارِزُونَ, the day when we shall all appear before Allah. لَا يَخْفَى عَلَى اللَّهِ مِنْهُمْ شَيْءٌ. Nothing at all is hidden from Allah. Allah knows everything about us. And then He says, لِمَنِ الْمُلْكُ الْيَوْمِ, to whom belongs the kingship or the dominion on this day? And He answers that question Himself. لِلَّهِ, to Allah, الْوَاحِدُ الْقَهَّارِ, or الْوَاحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ, the one, the only, Al-Qahhar, the irresistible, the all-dominant. And just to give us an idea of the majesty of Al-Malik, the one we're going to be standing in front of, Allah, He continues to say in ayah number 18, وَأَنذِرْهُمْ يَوْمَ الْآزِفَةِ إِذِ الْقُلُوبُ لَدَى الْحَنَاجِرِ كَاظِمِينَ. And warn them of the day, Yawm al-Azifah, the approaching day, is coming ever so fast towards you, whilst you and I think it's so far away. Such a day, idil qulub, your hearts, just imagine our heart, ladal hanajir, it's going to come up to our throats. Kadhimin, we're going to be choking on it. Such is the awe of that day. Such is that day when you are going to stand in front of Allah. Again, may Allah grant us all the honor of standing in front of Him whilst He is pleased with us. May Allah grant us all death as believers. And also we went over the name very briefly, Al-Malik. Al-Malik is the intense form of Al-Malik, the king. So it is further stressing or emphasizing the kingship and the ownership of Allah, that every single thing will be going back to Him, and likewise permanent kingship, that His kingdom will never end. His ownership will never end. Now to move on to today's topic, inshaAllah, the first thing we'll go over is the virtues of Surah Mulk. And we'll find that not many surahs in the Quran are connected to the names of Allah. In total, there are 10 out of the 114 surahs that you could find a link to one of the names of Allah. So we have Surah Fatiha, which is connected to Allah's name, Al-Fattah, the opener, or the giver of victory. We also have Surah Mu'minun, which you can link back to Allah's name, Al-Mu'min, the giver of Iman and security. Likewise, we also have Surah Nur, which you can relate back to Allah's name, An-Nur, which is the source of Nur, of light and enlightenment. Likewise, we also have Surah Fatir, which we link back to Allah's name, Al-Fatir, the originator of all things. We have Surah Ghafir. Again, we can trace this back to Allah's names, Al-Ghafir, Al-Ghafur, and Al-Ghaffar. And we have Surah Rahman, which I'm sure we are all aware. It goes back to the name of Allah, Ar-Rahman. And we have Surah Mulk, which you can trace it back to Allah's names, Al-Malik, Al-Malik, and Al-Malik. You have Surah A'la, which is traced back to Allah's name, Al-Ali, the Most High. You have Surah Qadr, which we can trace back to Allah's names, Al-Muqtadir, or Al-Qadir, the All-Powerful, the All-Able. And we have Surah Ikhlas, also known as Surah As-Samad. One of the other names of Surah Ikhlas is Surah As-Samad, which again is Allah's name, As-Samad. And so in that in itself should tell us how valuable these surahs are. And again, every single surah in the Quran holds its own value, holds its own place in our hearts. But Surah Mulk is one of those surahs that is so powerful, and it is such a blessing to us. It is all about Tawheed. It is all about Allah's kingship, Allah's control, His ultimate power, His perfect nature, and all about the Akhirah. Allah, He says, تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكُ وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. That blessed is He, Tabarak, the source of all goodness, the source of all goodness, of all blessedness, is He in whose hands possesses the kingship, or the kingdom of all things. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And He is over all things, all powerful. He is able to do all things. Think about how blessed your Lord is. Tabarak. Because the next two ayat is a continuation. You can say, Tabarak alladhi khalaqa al-mawta wal-hayata. He created death. The Lord that you're calling upon is the creator of death itself. That's one thing that every single human is afraid of. And He created life. He brought you into existence. The ulama, they say the reason why Allah said death first and then life, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ, is because you were dead before He brought you to life. When you were in the womb, when you were just an egg, first you were dead. And then He brought life out of you. And now you are alive. And then you will die again and go into your graves. Allah is the one who did all of this. Such is the majesty and the power of the one you are calling upon. And subhanAllah, it amazes me at times. I look at myself, we look at each other. How is it we stand in front of Allah in salah and we're not trembling out of amazement over how awesome Allah is? We beg Allah to grant us that level of guidance, of such khashiyah, that every time we stand in front of Him, we break down crying out of how amazed and in awe we are of Allah. Again, may Allah grant us all khashiyah of Him. Or you could say even the next ayah, الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ طِبَاقًا. Blessed is He, your Lord. Look at how He created the heavens above you, all flawless. مَا تَرَى فِي خَلْقِ الرَّحْمَنِ مِنْ تَفَاوُتٍ. You don't see any flaw, any deficiency in the creation of Allah. You won't see any cracks in the sky. Or likewise in the functionality. You don't see anything faltering. The sun doesn't stop for even a moment. The moon doesn't stop for even a moment. The planets do not stop orbiting for even a moment. Everything is working in perfect sync, and it has been doing so since the creation, since Allah created it. And that should give us an idea of how blessed and how powerful and how kingly Allah is. Allahu Akbar. May Allah grant us all the joy of meeting Him on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Likewise, Al-Malik, the King, in complete control of your security and safety. And these days we are slightly concerned over our security and safety with the riots and the far right, and we see across the globe how the Muslims are getting oppressed. You look left, right, center, wherever you go, the Muslims are being oppressed. Where is my sense of security? Allah alone holds your security. Your safety is with Allah alone. You could live in the safest country, in the safest environment, the safest neighborhood. But if Allah wants harm to come to you, it will come to you. That's why Allah, He says, أَمِنْتُم مَّن فِي السَّمَاءِ أَن يَخْسِفَ بِكُمُ الْأَرْضِ أَأَمِنْتُم مَّن فِي السَّمَاءِ أَن يَخْسِفَ بِكُمُ الْأَرْضِ فَإِذَا هِيَ تَمُورُ. What makes you feel so secure that the one in the heavens would not command the earth to swallow you, and then you'd see the earth swaying? أَمْ أَمِنْتُم مَّن فِي السَّمَاءِ أَن يُرْسِلَ عَلَيْكُمْ حَاصِبًا. Or He could send a violent storm of stones, a hot wind. فَسَتَعْلَمُونَ كَيْفَ نَذِيرٌ. And then we would know how severe Allah can be. May Allah protect us all from His punishments. Your support, your aid, and your victory is in Allah's hands alone. When He says, أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي هُوَ يَنْصُرُكُمْ. Who is it that could aid you and support you other than Allah? هُوَ جُنْدٌ لَكُمْ. Likewise, your rizq is in Allah's hands alone. He is the one who gives you your rizq. That which you are worrying about so much, it's all in Allah's control. أَمَّنْ هَذَا الَّذِي يَرْزُقُكُمْ إِنْ أَمْسَكَ رِزْقًا. Who else can provide for you if Allah has to withhold? All of these ayat, every single ayah, it calls you back to think about who Allah is, who Al-Malik is. And so every single day we are told to recite Surah Mulk. We should be reflecting and be amazed over how Allah is, over who Allah is, Al-Malik, the King. Likewise, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is mentioned that Jabir ibn Abdullah, he reports that he would not sleep up until he had recited Surah Sajda and Surah Mulk. Every night before he would sleep, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would never allow any day to go by except that he would recite Surah Sajda and Surah Mulk. And so we should also make it a habit. Try to implement the sunnah wherever we can, and we should recite Surah Mulk before we go to sleep. Likewise also, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, he reports that he heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that there is a surah in the Quran which contains 30 ayat, which kept interceding for a man until his sins are forgiven. This surah is Tabarakalladhi biyadihil mulk. Again, Surah Mulk. And so we have multiple names, as it's also been told to us by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu an, that whoever read Tabarakalladhi biyadihil mulk or Surah Mulk every single night, Allah will protect him from the torment of the grave. At the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we used to call it a different name. One of them is Al-Mani'ah, that which protects, because it will protect you in the grave. Likewise also, another name that Surah Mulk goes by is Al-Munjiyah. The one that grants salvation, it saves you because it can save you from the punishment of Jahannam. And likewise also Al-Mujadala. One of the other names of Surah Mulk is Al-Mujadala, because it argues on your behalf until Allah forgives you. And so again, may Allah grant us all the ability to be able to recite Surah Mulk consistently up until we return to Him. It's mentioned from the punishments of the grave. One of the punishments, we'll go over very, very quickly, is that a man will have his head crushed with a boulder. An angel will stand before him with a huge boulder, and he will smash his head. And then the boulder will roll away. So the angel will go to get the boulder. And by the time the angel gets the boulder and comes back, Allah has caused the head to come back. And so the angel crushes that head again. And what was the sin of this person? Is that Allah taught him the Quran. Allah taught him the Quran. But he would sleep the nights away and he wouldn't recite it. And he wouldn't implement it during the day. Now you may think that this does not concern me. Allah hasn't taught me that. I'm not a hafiz. But Allah has taught you Surah Fatiha perhaps. Have you perfected it? Do you live by it? What about the other short surahs you may know in the back? Or certain ayat that you know throughout the Quran. Allah has given you some portion of the Quran. It is impossible for a Muslim not to have a portion of the Quran, when for your basic salah to be accepted, you have to know Surah Fatiha. So no Muslim is excused from this. And a simple way to be protected from that, maybe you're so busy working, you cannot stay up at night doing Qiyam al-Layl, reciting the Quran. You're so busy working during the day, you cannot focus on implementing the ayat of Allah in your life. Recite Surah Mulk. You'll be protected from these punishments. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah protect us all from His torment, from the torments of the qabr, and from all of the horrors of Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so let's go back to the initial question we ask ourselves. Who are you dealing with? Who exactly are you dealing with? Ask yourself, the moment you call upon Allah, the moment you begin your ibadah, you start your salah, who are you dealing with? When we travel to the Sunnah, and it's mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, in such an amazing ayah, يَطْوِي اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ ثُمَّ يَأْخُذُهُنَّ بِيَدِهِ الْيُمْنَى ثُمَّ يَقُولُ أَنَا الْمَلِكُ أَنَا الْمَلِكُ أَيْنَ الْجَبَّارُونَ أَيْنَ الْمُتَكَبِّرُونَ. That on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah will fold up the heavens. Allah will fold up all of the large heavens, the vast heavens that you see above you. He will fold it up. And then He will place it in His right hand. And then He will say, I am the king. I am the king. Where are the Jabbarun, the tyrants of the earth now? Where are the Mutakabbirun, those who are too proud, the haughty, the arrogant? Then it's mentioned, ثُمَّ يَطْوِي الْأَرَضِينَ. Then He will fold the earth in His left hand. And again He'll call out, أَنَا الْمَلِكُ, I am the king. أَيْنَ الْجَبَّارُونَ, where are the tyrants? Maybe you're not a big tyrant like Fir'aun. Maybe not like Netanyahu, but are you a tyrant to your children? Are you a tyrant to your parents? Or perhaps to your spouses? Maybe you take away from their rights. Now what would be our situation on that day? Again, may Allah grant us all protection. Ayn al-mutakabbirun, where are the haughty and the arrogant? Likewise, it also mentioned that a Jewish scholar, he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he said that Allah, He would carry the heavens on one finger on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And He would carry the earths upon one finger. And He would carry the mountains and the trees, it would be placed on one finger. And the water and the moist earth, the ocean, would be placed on one finger. Just one finger. This is your Lord. This is Al-Malik. This is who we are standing before. And this is who we will meet on Yawm al-Qiyamah. One finger. Allahu Akbar. Such is the tremendous, Al-Azim, Allah. Allahu Akbar. Again, may Allah grant us all the joy of meeting Him when He is pleased with us. And He would stir them all. So when they are on His finger, He would stir them all saying, Al-Malik, Al-Malik, I am your king. I am your king. Thereupon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he smiled. He smiled so much that you could see his teeth. And he was testifying to what the scholar said. And then he recited the ayah from Surah Zumar, وَمَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِ, that we have not recognized Allah with the recognition that He deserves from us. But let us continue to the next ayah, otherwise we'll be here. We've got, I think, 2 or 3 more slides left. In the next ayah, again, ask yourself the question. You have a sense of the magnificence, the enormity and the tremendousness of your Lord, Allah, Al-Malik. But then what could you make of that very same king? Where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, يَنزِلُ اللَّهُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ الدُّنْيَا كُلَّ لَيْلٍ. Every single night, your Lord, He descends to the earth's sky in a manner that befits His Majesty. And then He calls out, فَيَقُولُ أَنَا الْمَلِكُ أَنَا الْمَلِكُ, I am the Lord, or I am the King. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَدْعُونِي. Who is there? Imagine. This is happening in the last third of the night. The King has come to the earth's sky in a manner that befits His Majesty. We do not try to imagine how. And He's calling out to each and every single one of us. Who is there calling upon me? فَأَسْتَجِيبُ لَهُ, so I may respond to his du'as. There is not a single Muslim who can ever doubt Allah's response after hearing this hadith. He continues calling out, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَسْأَلُنِي. Who is there asking me anything? فَأُعْطِيَهُ, so I may give it to him. An open invitation from your King Himself, saying, is there anything you want to ask? I'm ready to give it to you right now. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَسْتَغْفِرُنِي. Who is there seeking my forgiveness? فَأَغْفِرُ لَهُ, so I may forgive him. Again, this is happening. The heart of the Muslim, at this time when his eyes open, he wakes up excitedly. Ya Rabbi, labbaik, me. I want to ask you. I want to make dua. I want your forgiveness. You're the king, I'm your slave. And then he gets up, he does his wudu, and then he offers his salah. And then he stays in sujood. At the time of tahajjud, knowing that at that point, you and Allah are as close to each other as you could ever be in this life. At that final period, the last third of the night when you are in sujood, it is the closest you could ever be to Allah. And then you're thinking about this hadith. My Lord has just called, saying, who is there wanting to make dua? I'm here in sujood. Ya Rabb, can I ask you? Of course, subhanallah. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah grant us all closeness to Him. And we'll keep it over there for this week. Next week, we'll go over the final part, which is how to live by these names of Allah and the du'as that we can make that uses these names of Allah. We ask Allah to grant us all a good understanding. We ask Allah to enable us to live by His names for as long as we remain upon this earth. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم اجعل خير أعمالنا آخرة وخير أعمالنا خواتمة واجعل خير أيامنا يوم نلقاك. اللهم ارزقنا حبك وحب من ينفعنا حبه عندك. اللهم ما رزقتنا مما نحب فاجعله قوة لنا فيما تحب. اللهم وما زويت عنا مما نحب فاجعله فراغا لنا فيما تحب. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآرثنا ولا تؤثر علينا وارضنا وارض عنا. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد. أقول قولي هذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.